90-year-olds almost never regret the things they did. They regret the things they talked themselves out of doing on a random Tuesday, when the stakes felt too high and the couch felt too safe. A palliative care nurse in Australia spent 12 years recording the final reflections of dying patients, and the patterns she found will make you reorganize your entire week. Because right now today, you're probably building the exact regret list you'll read back to yourself at the end. The number one regret, repeated across hundreds of patients, was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, instead of the life others expected of me. Pay attention to that word, courage. These people knew what they wanted. The information was always there. What failed was the nerve to act on it while the clock still had slack. And the second most common regret reveals something stranger about how we spend our time. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. This came from every male patient the nurse interviewed. Every single one. They missed their children's youth. They missed friendships that quietly dissolved. They missed decades of ordinary Tuesdays that stacked together with the actual substance of their lives. The tragedy is precision. They could name the soccer games, the dinners, the conversations that never happened because they walked through the door at 9 p.m. with nothing left to give. So, here's a question worth sitting with. If you could watch a highlight reel of your last 5 years, how much of it would you actually recognize as yours? How much of it is a pattern someone else designed? A career track, a social expectation, a version of success you inherited before you were old enough to audit it? The deathbed test works like this. You take any decision you're facing, a job change, a difficult conversation, a creative project you keep postponing, and you fast forward to 85. You're lying in a bed, the room is quiet, and you ask one question: will I regret not doing this? The answer comes fast, faster than you'd expect. The reason it works is mechanical. Day to day, your brain evaluates decisions using short-term cost. Will this be uncomfortable? Will people judge me? Will I lose money? Will I look stupid? These feel like real calculations, but they have the shelf life of milk. At 85, none of them register. The cost framework collapses entirely, and the only currency left is meaning. Did I show up for the things that mattered to me? Did I say the thing? Did I go? A psychologist named Daniel Gilbert spent years studying how humans predict their future emotions. We're terrible at it. We overestimate how long negative events will hurt us and underestimate how quickly we'll adapt. You think quitting the stable job will haunt you for years. In reality, you'd adjust within months. But the regret of never quitting, that one compounds. It earns interest. It doesn't fade because you keep feeding it every time you sit at that desk. This asymmetry is the engine behind the deathbed test. Actions you take, even ones that fail, get metabolized. Your brain processes them, files them, moves on. Actions you avoid stay open, unfinished, like browser tabs running in the background, draining resources you can't see. The third most common regret on that nurse's list takes this somewhere personal. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. People suppressed what they felt in order to keep peace with others. And in doing so, they settled into a version of themselves that was comfortable for everyone except them. They developed bitterness, resentment that calcified so slowly they mistook it for personality. By the time they recognized it, the relationships they'd been protecting had become hollow anyway. Think about the last time you swallowed something you needed to say. You told yourself it wasn't the right moment. You'd bring it up later. You calculated the social cost and decided silence was cheaper. That math is correct in the short term. It's bankruptcy over a lifetime. A conversation you avoid today becomes a wall you build around a relationship. One brick doesn't block much light. A decade of bricks becomes a room with no windows. You're sitting across from someone at dinner, both of you performing a closeness that evaporated years ago, and neither of you can point to when it happened because it happened one avoided conversation at a time. The fourth regret connects to something you've probably already felt this week. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. People got so caught up in their own routines that they let golden friendships slip away. They didn't notice until the scaffolding of daily life fell away. Retirement, illness, loss of mobility, and the emptiness where connection used to live became impossible to ignore. Making new friends at 78 requires energy most people have already spent. And the fifth regret might be the most disorienting, one to hear while you're young enough to do something about it. I wish I'd let myself be happier. Read that again slowly. Let my selfies people realized at the end that happiness had been available the entire time. Fear of change had them pretending to others and to themselves that they were content. They stayed in patterns and habits that numbed them because the numbness was familiar, and familiar felt like safe. So the deathbed test gives you a framework. But frameworks are useless without friction. You need a mechanism that forces the confrontation regularly, because your brain is built to avoid exactly this kind of long horizon thinking. Survival wiring keeps you focused on the next 48 hours. Thinking about 85 feels abstract, distant, someone else's problem. One method that actually sticks: write your own eulogy. Sit down with a blank page and write what you'd want someone to say about you after you're gone. The gap between what you write and how you're currently living is your actual to-do list. Everything else is noise. The exercise hurts. It should. You'll write things like, "She built something that mattered," and then realize you've spent the last 3 years optimizing something that doesn't. You'll write, "He was present for the people he loved," and then look at your screen time report. The dissonance is the data. A Franciscan friar named Richard Rohr described this pattern in people over 50. Most of them spent the first half of life building a container: career, identity, reputation, possessions, and the second half realizing the container was supposed to hold something. Many found it empty. The construction had consumed all the years that could have been spent filling it. Here's where the deathbed test gets uncomfortable in a way most people don't discuss. It exposes a specific lie you tell yourself about time. The lie sounds like this: "I'll do it later. Later when the kids are older. Later when I have more money. Later when things calm down." You treat later like a savings account where you can deposit intentions and withdraw them when convenient. Later doesn't exist. No, let me put that differently. Later exists, but it arrives wearing a disguise. It shows up as a random Wednesday when you're 53 and your knees ache and your parents need care and you have even less margin than you do right now. The version of later you're imagining, spacious, calm, free, is a fantasy your present self invented to avoid present discomfort. The people in that palliative care ward had all believed in later, every single one. So reverse engineering a life with no regrets requires exactly one shift. You stop optimizing for comfort in the present and start optimizing for peace at the end. These produce radically different decisions. Comfort says stay in the job. Peace says have the conversation. Comfort says tomorrow. Peace says the math only works if you start now. The deathbed test is brutal because it's simple. You already know the answers. You've known them for years. The courage gap between knowing and doing is where an entire life gets built, or gets wasted. That eulogy you'd write for yourself, the one full of presence and meaning and risk and connection, nobody else is going to write it for you. The pen has been in your hand this whole time, and every day you hold it without writing is another line that says, "Waited."